Welcome everybody and happy Pride. Thank you all for being here. I wanted to open up this training by first of all sharing a little bit about SVCN and letting you know about some of our upcoming stuff. For those of you who are not yet familiar with the Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits, my name is Jennifer Terai. I am the Director of Learning and Member Engagement. We also have our Chief Strategy and Policy Officer, Wendy Ho, on the Zoom today. You cannot, oh, there's her face. There she is. And we are very excited to be here with all of you today and offer this awesome workshop that we have coming up. But before we get into that, I want to let you know, Silicon Valley Council of Nonprofits, we've been around for more than 20 years now in Santa Clara County. And while we started off as mostly policy support, policy development, advocacy, we have grown to become also a learning entity for nonprofit staff, which is why we are here today. And so, as we continue to serve our nonprofit members, we love to hear what it is that you in our community need from us, how we can support you, and just to give you some examples of the things that we can do, we have an upcoming workshop on, I'm covering it up, July 7th. It is part of our Road to Reopening series. As we all know, businesses are reopening after our sheltering in place. And this workshop will focus on staff care, how to support your workforce in a time of crisis. So join us on July 7th at 1 o'clock. We will be hearing a presentation and seeing a panel conversation moderated by Imelda Gonzalez from the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. Lots of self-care tips and ideas to support your staff during this interesting time. And I want to let you all know the census is very important, and it is still on our minds even through all that's happening. Everything that's going on, especially sheltering in place and dealing with all of the things related to the pandemic, are just one way in which the census, has proven like it's important because it helps us to get the necessary funding from the federal government so that we can continue to provide very much needed social services. So if we get a complete count on our census for our county will receive more resources and funding to be able to support all of our community through times such as this. So join us on July 10th so you can learn how to talk to your clients, those hard to count communities. We'll give you some really practical tools and tips to start the conversation and to encourage our community to fill out the census. You'll find registration for both of these workshops at svcn.org. And for those of you who can't make it to a morning workshop about the census, we are going to offer an evening session as well. This date is actually subject to change because I just found out our trainer has another engagement that night. So stay tuned for an evening offering. And all of these so far that I've shown you are free workshops. Take advantage of that because we don't always offer free workshops like today's. We also want to let all of you know in our community that SVCN is being very intentional in trying to build a resource page and support our nonprofits with diversity, equity, race equity, diversity, and inclusion work. It's something that all of our team cares deeply about, and we feel that it's a time where it's most important right now to be able to be that resource hub for all of your organizations so that we can provide you with whatever support you need to move your race equity, diversity, and inclusion work forward. So please check out our website, and I'll include all the links in the chat in just a minute. But check out our website. Let us know what it is that you want in our resource page so that we can make sure that whatever we're providing for you is useful and can help you move your work forward. And then I don't know how many of you have heard of our Funding Your Impact Summit. It was an in-person all-day conference, and this year it's virtual. So these are the dates that we plan to roll out our virtual summit series. And we have a call for speakers. So if you know any awesome fund development, fundraisers, marketing folks who you think could provide some really needed tools to our nonprofit community during this time, please encourage them to come to our website and fill out our call for speakers form. And lastly, if you are not yet an SVCN member, your organization, because if you don't know, our members are the orgs, not just the people. Like, we take the entire org as a member. Please go to our website and check out membership. You can join us today and enjoy benefits such as discounts to workshops and events when they are ticketed. We've got member-only policy forums, issue discussions, and we provide all kinds of resources for our members. So please go to our website, join us as a member, or renew. Encourage your team to renew your SVCN membership today. So on that note, I would like to now introduce our awesome presenters, Sarah Fernando and Kehlani Lewis. First, I'll pass it over to Sarah. Sarah has been with the Office of LGBTQ Affairs she's a newer member of the team and joins us with a lot of experience in moving equity work forward, and is a fierce advocate and does amazing things. And I am just excited to have her with us today. And I believe you're going to introduce Kehlani. Yes? Okay, cool.
Yeah, I can do that.
So on that note, I want to pass it over to Sarah because I'm talking too much. Thank you, Sarah. Take it away.
You're all good. Okay, thank you, Jen. Thank you, Wendy, and thank you, SVCN, for having us today. And to each and everyone on the call, happy Pride. My name is Sarah. I go by she, her pronouns. I'm a proud queer transgender woman, and I'm so delighted to be here today to introduce SOGIE training with the main host, who's going to be Kehlani. Just to give you a little bit of background about the work we do. We are from the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, which is part of the Division of Equity and Social Justice under the County Executive Office. And we do a lot of work when it comes to social justice and equity, obviously, by how the name implies, right? Our mission is to provide leadership support for the well-being and longevity of the LGBTQI+ communities in Santa Clara County through coordinated, integrated approaches. As we know, Pride 2020 is still here. Today is the last day, and I'm so delighted that we're doing this as kind of like our grand finale, if you will. To Pride 2020 or Pride Month. And with the current socio-political climate, a lot of events are going virtual, obviously, with shelter in place. And there has been a lot of feelings around Pride overall, especially when it comes to law. So just this year, if you folks know, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which defines sex in terms of workplace discriminations and workplace inclusion, has now included under sex gender identity. So under gender identity, you cannot be discriminated against in the workplace due to your gender identity or expression. And that had to be explicitly stated by the Supreme Court of the United States, which is a huge win for the LGBTQI+ community, specifically trans folks, right? 4 days before that ruling, though, actually 3 days, the Friday before that ruling, the Trump administration finalized a rule under the Department of Health and Human Services that rolled back trans protections when it comes to healthcare. So now, in terms of healthcare, health insurance, healthcare providers, they now can discriminate on the basis of gender identity because they could now recognize gender as only biological at birth, which rolls back a lot of protection, especially during this climate right now, during shelter in place, during COVID-19, when trans folks need their health care right now. And we all know that Black and brown trans folks and Black and brown community members are most afflicted by COVID-19. This is where trans folks who are at the furthest margins of the spectrum, they'll be affected greatly because now a healthcare provider can now discriminate against them. That is a huge loss for this community, and this is where we need to continue to fight for equity and inclusion in this space. So thinking about those two things, especially Black Lives Matter and Black Trans Lives Matter, making sure that we're able to talk about and have these conversations about intersectionality, inclusion, allyship, we feel that allyship in education is super important, and that's why we're here today. We ask that the work that you folks do not only include LGBTQI plus education, but think through it through an intersectional lens that includes queer, trans, Black, and Indigenous people of color. So again, I'll be in the background moderating all sorts of questions. But without further ado, here is our community outreach specialist and trainer extraordinaire who just gave a wonderful resource fair, and hopefully we'll talk a little bit more about that as resources. We just did that yesterday, so yeah. But Kilani Lewis, community outreach specialist, the incredible Kilani Lunis. Go ahead and take it away.
I'm going to insist on being called Lunis from now on.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Thank you, Kilani.
Thank you, Sarah. And thank you all for being here. It feels weird just talking out into the ether, but I trust that y'all are there. Yeah, so as Sarah said, my name is Kilani. I'm the community outreach specialist with the office. I've been with the office since January of 2019, so I guess about a year and a half. And so my role as community outreach specialist oftentimes looks like a lot of different things. Today it looks like being the office trainer. So again, thank you all for being here. Sarah mentioned the resource fair. We had a virtual resource fair yesterday that the office hosted, and it was a really fun, really great event where we had organizations and county departments all come together and kind of just speak to their services, their resources, the things that they have available for the LGBTQ plus community here in Santa Clara County, specifically in response to COVID-19 and shelter in place. And so we produced this video and had a Q&A, a live panel. And so folks may or may not, I saw a couple of familiar names on the list today. So I guess shout out to those of you who attended and participated yesterday. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Anyone who missed it, fear not. We're gonna put out the video. We're gonna have it all available for you as a resource. And because we're all here today because we want to support the LGBTQ plus community, right? And so we're here today to have a SOGIE workshop, a SOGIE webinar. And please bear with me. This is my first virtual training as a trainer. So I'm excited that this is kind of an intimate group, and so we're just gonna have fun. So SOGIE 101, right? We've been using this term SOGIE a lot, SOGIE 101. We used to call this training LGBTQ 101, but we've switched it to SOGIE 101. And we're going to be talking about a lot of acronyms. So just let's set the stage a little bit. And maybe if folks can pop into the chat or something, and let's just walk through what does LGBTQ stand for? If we start with the L, what does the L in LGBTQ stand for? If someone maybe wants to throw it in the chat. Or not, that's okay. Oh, Susanna, thank you so much. Lesbian, yeah, you're absolutely right. How about the G? Anyone out there want to name the G for us? Gay, yep, thank you, Jody. How about B? Anyone? Bisexual, yep, Jody coming through again. And Susanna, thank you, yep. Okay, how about the T? Trans, yep, Sarah, thank you. And Jody and Susanna. God, see, I don't need to be here. Y'all don't need this. Just kidding. Transgender, trans or transgender. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not gonna make jokes. And how about the Q? Let's talk about the Q here for a second. Queer, yep, Jody's got queer. Any other ideas on the Q? Queer questioning, yeah, definitely. So queer and questioning, definitely. God, why? Definitely. Queer and questioning. The Q can stand. The Q can stand for queer and or questioning. But LGBTQ, right? That's 5 letters. LGBTQ. Have folks heard the term LGBTQ plus? We oftentimes will include a plus sign here, right? Because we know that this community is so much more than just these 5 things. can folks think of other identities that fall under the LGBTQ umbrella, even though it might not be included in the acronym LGBTQ specifically? What would fall under the plus? Non-binary, pansexual, yep. And I'm realizing now only we can see the answers, y'all can't see each other's, but thank you for Jennifer. Yep, asexual. Yeah, so I wrote out a few. We also have intersex, asexual was brought up, non-binary. I included two-spirit, pansexual we talked about, and genderqueer. And again, by no means is this an exhaustive list. There are so many different identities and terms and I guess just to really make a point that LGBTQ is such a wide umbrella term. And so we used to call this training, again, LGBTQ+, and we found that turned out to be rather polarizing for some folks because people thought, well, I'm not an LGBTQ person, so this is not important to me, right? I don't know any LGBTQ people, which is a lie. Everyone knows a queer person. But we decided to rename this training to SOGIE 101 because, actually, pause. Okay, what does SOGIE even stand for? Can we all maybe break down? And this is a little complicated. SOGIE is not a letter by letter acronym, but maybe you saw on the registration page, or maybe you saw somewhere, maybe you've heard the term SOGIE before. Does anyone have any ideas as to what SOGIE might refer to or stand for?
Ilani, can I just quickly mention to all of our participants that when you are chatting, you have to change who will receive your messages from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that everyone can see, because we are seeing all of the responses and I don't think any of you are seeing each other's right now. But thank you, Jennifer, for pointing that out. Go on.
Okay. Thank you, Jen and Jennifer. So yeah, so back to SOGIE. What is SOGIE? Does anyone have any ideas? Bueller? No, God, I think I'm funny. Okay. Oh, sexual orientation, gender identity. Yes, thank you, Jody. You are absolutely right. The SO in SOGIE stands for sexual orientation, and the GI does stand for gender identity. We also do have this E on the end, and so we include gender expression. And the whole reason, again, that we changed the title of the training from LGBTQ 101 to SOGIE 101 is because every single person has SOGIE. SOGIE applies to all of us. We all have a sexual orientation. We all have a gender identity. We all express our gender in a certain way. And we're even going to expand upon SOGIE a little bit further and include sex assigned at birth. So we're going to talk about 4 things today. Talk about sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression. That's SOGIE acronym. And we're also going to talk about sex assigned at birth. Are we doing okay so far? And again, I know Jen already mentioned too, if folks have questions throughout, please feel free to add those in, but I know this is a lot. I know this is a weird format, so thank you for bearing with us. So anyway, so sex assigned at birth. Sex assigned at birth, this is what this is a term that we use when we're referring to the designation made on a person's birth certificate, right? So a baby is born, comes out into the world, there's some sort of doctor, medical professional, or someone there usually to assist this process. They pull this baby out, they look at the baby's genitalia, essentially, and they, based on that perception of what they see of their genitalia, their anatomy, they say, oh, this is a boy, or this is a girl, right? However, we know that it can't always just be that straightforward, right? Things don't always fit so beautifully in these nice little boxes. We have a term called intersex, and intersex, you might remember, was included in our LGBTQ+ acronym. And the term intersex is used for folks who are born with a variation in their sex characteristics. So this could include a difference in their chromosomes and their gonads, their sex hormones, genitals, etc. All these things that don't typically fit into the standard male or female genitalia anatomy, right? We don't talk about intersex experience much. We don't know a lot about it. We do know that it's rather common. It's a lot more common than cystic fibrosis. About 1.3 in every 1,000 live births are intersex. But again, because we don't know how to put this in our box of male or female, oftentimes folks who are born intersex don't even know until later in life, if ever. So intersex, yeah, intersex. Sexual orientation, sorry, sex assigned at birth. This is interesting. Sex assigned at birth. So this is the only term that we're talking about today that has to do with a person's physiology, with their biology, with anything having to do with anatomy, right? Sex assigned at birth. So let's move into gender identity, if that's okay. So gender identity, this refers to our internal sense of our gender, of being male, being female, neither, both, something else, nothing, all, you know, whatever, what have you. But again, this is your internal sense. This is how you know yourself to be. A term gender diverse is also oftentimes used to talk about gender identity. And this is another umbrella term. We have a lot of umbrella terms, but this is an umbrella term that we use when we're describing identities that that don't conform to the norms or the stereotypes of what is expected to be male or female. Our society operates on a very strict kind of binary system. And by binary, I mean two points on either end. And for us, in terms of gender, we think of it, again, exclusively as male or female. If I were to ask you folks, what is a man? Who is a man? What does he look like? I'm sure you would be able to fill this chat with a ton of characteristics, a ton of identities, a ton of characteristics, as it were, that we think define a man, right? However, when we're talking about our gender identity, we don't always fit those. And it's up to us to decide what that is, who that is, and what it means for ourselves. So some other terms to touch back on gender diverse, when we're talking about gender identity, we have gender nonconforming, gender variant, gender expansive. And again, all of this is to expand beyond gender on a binary structure or a binary system. Cool? Okay. So let's break down this T, the T in LGBTQ. We went over the acronym. We know that LGBTQ stands for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer or questioning. The T, transgender, is not a sexual orientation, whereas all the rest of them are, right? So oftentimes the T gets overlooked. It kind of gets lumped into, there's a lot of misunderstanding. There's a lot of, again, just overlooking of the T and lumping it together. So transgender in and of itself is another umbrella term. This is great. I should design a background that's an umbrella so I can just sit beneath it here and have rain down, pink and white and blue raindrops. But anyway, so transgender is a term that describes a person whose gender identity does not align with the sex that they were assigned at birth. That prefix trans means across, right? And by no means am I trying to suggest that you need to go from one thing across to the other. We're going beyond that binary, right? We are just talking about someone who does not identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth. So some alternate terminology that we have when we're talking about trans folks, we could say a transgender woman, a trans woman, someone who's trans feminine, male to female, or alternatively, a woman. What? A trans woman? A woman? We also have trans man, transgender masculine, trans masculine, female to male, etc. Again, all of those operate on that binary. Beyond the binary, we have non-binary or gender queer. Those other terms on that last slide, gender diverse, gender variant, gender queer, gender expansive. All of these are used to describe folks who don't identify exclusively as a man or as a woman. So maybe a combination of the two, maybe neither, maybe something else altogether. Just someone who does not identify exclusively as male or female, as a man or as a woman. And then lastly, our term cisgender. I don't know if folks are familiar at all with the term cisgender, but cisgender is another term for gender identity, and the prefix cis means same. So cisgender is the term that we use to describe folks who do identify with the sex that they were assigned at birth. So that looks like a baby is born, they say, oh, it's a girl. That girl goes on to live her life, grows up to be a woman, embraces that identity. She says, yes, I'm a woman. I was born a girl, I'm a woman. That's a cisgender female. Alternatively, someone born a boy, lives his life, he goes up, grows into be a man, whatever that means for him. That's his jam. That's what he feels like. He was born a boy, identifies as a man. He's on that same side. He's in correspondence. He's a cisgender man. Cool? Gender identity? Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so we live in California, and that's a super cool thing. The state of California actually legally recognizes non-binary as a third sex or third gender. And I really want us to keep in mind that we are not conflating sex and gender identity. These are two completely separate topics. Our sex assigned at birth is not the same as our gender identity. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. Cis, trans, we just talked about that. But I'm saying that even though it says on here California's third gender, it is technically a legal sex. And I know that that's confusing. It's all in the works. This is all still fairly new. It just came out back in 2017, so a couple years at this point. But former Governor Jerry Brown basically just said finally that individuals, we're now allowed to self-certify our own name and our own gender without needing a physician's declaration. We no longer need to provide letters. We no longer need to provide documentations that say we're allowed to change our gender or our sex on our legal IDs. And that's huge. That's huge. Keep in mind, though, this only applies to the state of California, so no federal documents. We're not talking about social security cards or passports or green cards or anything like that. We are talking about your state ID card, your driver's license, anything specific to the state of California. You can now go to the DMV and say, I want to change my marker to non-binary. So where we see M's and F's on our license under sex, now there's a rollout, there has been a rollout already of an X. So if you start to see X's on folks' IDs, now you'll know that that's a non-binary marker as a third option for folks to legally self-certify, which is fantastic. Yeah, Jen says awesome, cool. I think it's awesome too. All right, are we okay? We're okay. I'm speaking out into the ether here. I'm just talking to myself. Sweet. Okay, so we've talked about sex assigned at birth. We've talked about gender identity. Let's now talk about gender expression. You're here and listening. Thank you, Jen. So our gender expression is our outward presentation. It's how we navigate ourselves through the world. It's what we put out into the world. It's our external sense of, or our external portrayal, I guess, of our gender. It's our style, it's our clothing, it's our hair, it's our makeup, our jewelry, our body language. Even it's all of these things all come together to comprise our gender expression. One thing that I want to note and make sure it's very, very important across the board, we can never, ever, ever, please don't ever assume someone's identity based on what they look like, okay? And especially when it comes to gender expression and gender identity, you cannot ever assume a person's gender identity based on their gender expression. A lot of times folks may not express themselves the way that they identify, and there's this whole slew of reasons. And actually, let's talk. Let's get back in this chat here and tell me, why do you think someone might not express their gender in a way that aligns with their gender identity? Perhaps someone identifies a certain way and wants to, yeah, I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna leave it there. Hop in the chat, let me know you're here, and tell me why do you think, again, someone's gender expression might not match their gender identity? What do we think? They might not be comfortable, yeah. Any other thoughts? Perhaps they're not accepted by their loved ones. Maybe exploring it for themselves. Yeah, so there's a whole number of reasons. Some other things, yeah, they haven't told anyone. Maybe they're not out yet. Thank you, Yari. Maybe they're not out yet. Maybe they're not comfortable. Safety. Thank you, Sarah. You stole it right out of my mouth. Safety. Do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Sure, yeah. So as we were talking about, like right when we're opening up, being able to express gender in a very visible manner, depending on kind of like the social circles and the environment that you're in, it might not be accepting of someone that identifies, say, as trans. So your personal safety could be at risk, especially if it's not in a welcoming environment. This is particularly, this is more particular to, like, say you're living in a household with roommates or with your family, and if they have not created a safe environment for you to express your gender, then your safety is at risk. And being able to be your authentic self is probably going to be covered just because of the fact that you can't, your personal safety is more important than gender expression, because you could get physically harmed, mentally harmed, and all those things. So safety is a big thing when it comes to gender expression and being able to visibly show that.
Yeah, those are all really great points. Thank you, Sarah. It looks like we have a question here from Jennifer. For clarification, could that mean someone presents as male but identifies as female? Yeah. So, and you want an example? One of my very best friends, her name is Andres. Andres, if you ever saw her walking down the street, she has a beard. She dresses in a very masculine way. She wears jeans and flannel shirts and again, just presents in what she describes herself as masculine. However, she does identify as female. And like Sarah was saying, the whole reason she does this a lot of times is because she does not feel safe growing her hair out or shaving her beard or and things happen. I was with her one time in a grocery store. Someone tapped her on her shoulder and asked her what was between her legs, because they thought that what they were seeing her presenting her gender as on the outside didn't match the tone of her voice, didn't match mannerisms, didn't match how she was acting, didn't match how she and I were interacting necessarily. But because this person saw her expression on the outside, thinking this would be a man, right, or a male identified person, so she presents very masculine. So her sexual assignment at birth was what she presented as. Yes, she was, yes. So in this case, her gender identity and her gender expression were what is not in alignment, but her sex assigned at birth and her gender expression were in alignment. Does that make sense? Yeah. So again, though, we don't know, and it's contextual. It's contextual. Sometimes, we express our gender a certain way. If I'm going into the office, maybe I'm going to dress differently than if I'm going to go home and take my girlfriend out on a date, right? Like it's all contextual. Maybe today I decided to do my hair because I'm presenting to all of you and I know you're out here. And however, if I'm at home and chilling, and I'm going to express my gender in a very different way, right? It's all contextual. It's all a matter of comfort. And so all the more reason too, we can't assume someone's gender based on what we see on the outside. Cool. So some terms that we use to talk about gender expression. Masculine. So we've all heard the term masculine before. It's a term used to describe the socially constructed and culturally specific gender behaviors that are expected of men. So why don't we stay in the chat here? Can folks just throw out a few masculine traits? Again, I was saying, if I were to ask you, what is a man? What does he look like? What does he sound like? What does he do? Can you all just throw some ideas in the chat? Tell me, who is a man? What does he look like? What does he sound like? What does he do? What are these socially constructed and culturally specific behaviors that we expect of men? Hairy, okay. Facial hair, oh wow, we got two hairies. Oh, and strength. All right, Melissa. Facial hair, okay, sure, Jen. Macho, aggressive, and dominant. And of course, stereotypically, I'm not gonna go back and be like, oh my God, Jennifer thinks that all men are macho, aggressive, and dominant. We're not saying that you believe these things. I'm asking you, what does society believe a man to be? What does our cultural our culture expect of a man? But yeah, so definitely macho, aggressive, dominant. We think facial hair beard. I was telling you about my friend, right? She has a beard and yet muscular. Yeah. So it sounds like a lot of things that are coming to mind with this group are very external traits, right? We're thinking of his physical appearance. He's strong, he's muscular, and then his behavior too, right? Macho, aggressive, and dominant. If a man is macho, aggressive, oh, okay, sociology background, got it. Got it. Thank you, Jennifer. But yeah, so even behaviorally, right? Like oh, in a deeper voice, definitely. I don't know if any of you out there identify as masculine or male or as a man, but I highly doubt that any of the people we know who identify as man or male or masculine could identify with every single trait that we just put out here, right? Not every man is gonna be muscular and macho and aggressive and dominant and have a deep voice and have facial hair. And you know, we can't, no one can possibly check off all these boxes, right? It is absurd that we think that this is what the criteria is to hold these identities. So let's turn the tables here. Let's talk about a woman. Let's talk about what it means to be feminine. Throw these things out here in the chat for me. Tell me who a woman is. Tell me what she looks like. Tell me what she does. Long hair, yeah. Gentle and soft, weak and helpless. Be singing Hamilton all night now or all day. Pretty and dainty, passive, helpful. Uses makeup. Yeah. Cute. Oh, Jen, cute. Yeah, I know, kawaii. Sorry, now my Japanese is coming out. So yeah, so okay, so gentle, caring, nurturing, a lot of the same. And this is all very, I guess, the opposite of what we said a man is, right? We said he's macho and aggressive and assertive, right? And here we're saying that women are gentle, caring, and nurturing. And we look at men who are macho and assertive and dominant, and we think, oh, that guy's a boss, right? Oh, he's powerful, he's in control, that guy's a boss. But we look at a woman who identify or who exudes these same traits and these same characteristics, and so we see a woman in charge who's powerful and assertive, and what do we call her? We go, oh, she's a bitch, right? I assume we're all adults. I'm sorry, I just said it. But it's true. You know what? I stand by it. It's true. We would call her a bitch, and that's not cool. That is not okay. One other term. I'm sorry. I'm kind of getting on my soapbox here. So I'm going to step down and get us back on track. So our last gender expression term is androgynous, right? So androgynous is a gender expression that can kind of combine both these masculine and feminine elements. Can folks give me some examples of maybe celebrities or common, just popular figures in the media who might have a more androgynous expression? Do folks have any ideas? Does anyone come to mind? And perhaps why David Bowie? Yes, I love David Bowie. Is one of the ones that almost always comes up. Wendy, since you're on, do you want to maybe pop on and just so I feel bad that folks are only hearing my voice. So Wendy, do you maybe want to share why you said David Bowie?
Sure, Keelan. So I would say David Bowie, just because he was able to kind of blur the lines, if you will, between kind of the various gender expressions. Some would, were always taken back by his application of makeup and short kind of pixie style haircut. David Bowie always used to wear very creative outfits, which I think were not gender conforming either. So when I think of androgyny, I think of David Bowie.
Yeah, thank you, Wendy. And Sarah, Jen, you mentioned Boy George, and then Sarah and Jen also both JVN. Do either of you want to speak to either of those?
Sure, I can. Jonathan Van Ness, part of the new Queer Eye on Netflix, not to give him a plug, but I absolutely love the new Queer Eye. Jonathan Van Ness has recently came out as non-binary. So their look is very androgynous, and that's someone that is confident to wear a skirt or wear blouses, but still have a full-on beard, have that ponytail, but not necessarily wear too much makeup. So it's very androgynous in his, oh, I'm sorry, in their appearance. So yeah, Jonathan Van Ness, Queer
Yeah.
Eye, Netflix.
Thank you, Sarah. Jennifer is also calling out Jodie Foster, and I agree, definitely, saying, you know, she's not typically girly as we would expect, or again, as our society would deem girly. I also think of like Janelle Monáe, right? We think she does present very hyper femme in terms of the makeup and her hairstyle, but she's often wearing suits and or with high heels even, right? So just kind of taking the best of both worlds. Freddie Mercury, right? Very androgynous. You know, we could Tilda Swinton. Yes. See, we could do this all day. But we're not going to because we only have 45 minutes left. All right, so it sounds like we're getting the gist of this. We've covered sex assigned at birth. We've covered gender identity. We've covered gender expression. We're understanding that these are all completely separate concepts. Yep, cool. Let's move on. Sexual orientation. What is sexual orientation? Well, I'll tell you. It is the emotional, romantic, and physical feelings of attraction to others. Aw, who gives us butterflies? That's how I hear it described sometimes. Okay, sexual orientation terms. There's a ton of them. A lesbian we already talked to. I'm just gonna throw these all up here and I'm gonna let them chill for a minute. Y'all can read. I'm gonna sip on my water. Let's take these in for a second. And then we'll talk about maybe some of them. Okay, I sipped my water and now I feel awkward already. So I'm gonna talk again. So lesbian, gay, bisexual, heterosexual or straight, asexual, queer, pansexual. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. Do you folks maybe have questions? I know a lot of these are very common. If you have questions about any of these, please feel free to put them in the chat or put them in the Q&A. But otherwise, I wanna just talk about a couple very briefly. You'll notice on here that I have heterosexual and straight, but I don't have homosexual. And there is a very specific rationale behind that. Homosexual is a term that's been used most often to hurt the LGBTQ community. It's been used to pathologize. It's been used to diagnose as a disorder. It was in the DSM up until just a couple decades ago, which is absurd and scary to think about. I guess a few decades at this point. I think the 70s they yanked it out, 60s. Any of my clinical friends out there can maybe help me out. But anyway, so homosexual is a term that, again, was used to pathologize the community. It was used against us. It was used to say, oh, that's a homosexual, and therefore you could get committed, you could get subjected to some really terrible conversion therapies or just some really terrible things. So we try and stay away from that term homosexual. This is heterosexual and straight. We do use to describe folks who are attracted to those who identify as genders other than their, oh, thank you, Jen. DSM stands for the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. I told you, there are gonna be a ton of acronyms. So thank you for that, Jen. I also want to call out the word queer. The word queer, for some folks, kind of creates this very like visceral reaction. And I find that it not always, but it can kind of be a bit of a generational divide on this term queer. I love the word queer personally. I think it's great. I identify as a queer person. However, though, again, it's one of those words that has been used in a very negative and a very derogatory and a very hurtful way against the community. There is this big movement to kind of reclaim it, to take it back and be like, okay, no, we're going to lean into this. This is okay, you know. However, again, there is still that kind of mentality, and it carries a certain weight for a lot of people. So my point here is queer is not a word that you should ever assign to someone. I just told you that I'm a queer person. That tells you that I'm good with that word. You can use that when you're talking about Keelani, you know, about myself. Oh, I met Keelani from the Office of LGBTQ Affairs. They are queer, right? They're a queer person. They're a non-binary queer person. However, maybe Sarah doesn't like that word. If Sarah hasn't given you that word for herself, so you're not going to go, oh, Keelani and Sarah are both two queer people from the Office of LGBTQ Affairs, because you don't know that. We're not going to assign, we're not going to label folks as such. Sarah, I saw you hop off mute. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, with the word queer specifically, I identify as a queer trans woman. And the reason why I use the word queer is because in terms of sexuality, as identifying as trans, it just, that my sexual orientation experience has been very fluid, meaning it goes like back and forth, up and down. Like when I first started off, I identified as a lesbian, and then during my journey, I found myself more attracted to men, and then uh, it excluded a lot of just like gender overall. So now it's pansexual. Then I'm discovering myself a little bit more on the bisexual side. So it's like, for me, queer is like the easiest way where I could not only identify as sexually, but also with my own gender identity. I myself identify as queer because it's just for me, a convenient umbrella term to not necessarily divulge too much about myself. I could just say like, hey, I'm queer and I'm here. and that's just the easiest way to describe myself so that folks can understand, oh, I'm from the queer community, from the LGBTQI community. So it's just easier for me rather than having to explain my sexual orientation.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And I want to bring up, you just brought up bisexual and pansexual, and this is these are both terms that folks can sometimes get a little tripped up on, and that's okay. And a lot of these terms too, I want to say, even though on the slide right here in front of you, you have definitions, but again, this is not an exhaustive list. This is not, I'm not Merriam-Webster. I'm not, you know, I'm not, I'm now blanking on all the other big dictionaries, but these terms, the beauty of language, right, is that terms can mean whatever we want, that not whatever we want them to, but identity is something that is such, you know, it's so unique to our own individual, our own experiences. So my definition of queer is probably going to be a little bit different than Sarah's definition of queer. It might be different than Jen's definition of queer. It might be different than Wendy's definition of queer. Quote of the year, I'm not Merriam-Webster. Thank you. You can call me Webster if you want. No, I don't know why okay. Anyway, so bisexual and pansexual. Okay. Bisexual and pansexual. A lot of folks get confused sometimes thinking, what's the difference? Are they the same? Bi, pan. Bi means two, pan means all. And so this is just to say that bisexual is a term that we use to describe folks who are attracted to two or more genders. And even this definition has evolved and expanded over time. It used to be someone who's attracted to men and women, right? We're trying to move it into two or more genders because we're trying to move away from the binary. So ideally, not ideally, but usually, no, not even. Sometimes someone who identifies as bisexual will be attracted to their own gender and another gender, right? So it could be someone's attracted to cisgender female and transgender females, right? Like that's two different gender identities, but they're attracted to both. Versus a pansexual person is attracted to someone regardless of that person's identities, right? Someone who identifies as pansexual is attracted to other people based on who they are, not what they are. And that's just, I think the easiest, most baseline way I could put it. It's about who they are as a person, not what they identify as. Make sense? Yep. Okay. Words are hard, and I am not Merriam-Webster. Okay, now you see before you this beautiful image. Now, again, this is very baseline. This is a 101. This is even an intro course. We're making time. Okay, so this is just an attempt to put these to visually depict the four big topics that we've been talking about. So gender identity, sexual orientation, and sex assigned at birth, and gender expression. If you recall, Gender identity is our internal sense of knowing ourselves to be something. So we have our brain up here in our head. It's how we know ourselves to be. It's in our heads. It's between our ears. No one else has access to this information. We are the only ones who can access it, and then we get to put it out there into the world. Our sexual orientation, we signify it with the heart here. Again, it's those feelings of attraction or lack thereof to other folks. Again, who gives you those butterflies, those feelings of attraction. Sex assigned at birth, like I said, it's the only physiological, anatomical, biological term that we've been talking about. It's your autonomy, it's your chromosomes, it's your it's your hormones, it's all of the inside stuff. And then your gender expression is what's on the outside, how we portray ourselves to the world. So our genderbread person here, I don't know if I told you that this is the genderbread person, like a gingerbread man, but a genderbread person because it's neutral. Our genderbread person, they are expressing their gender. They have some cute earrings on, some dangly star earrings. I know Jen had some cool earrings on, she was showing us. They got a hat, they got this little clutch, maybe they're getting ready for a night out on the town, their hat and their earrings and their purse. But again, so it's what's on the outside. This is the gender unicorn. This is just kind of another expanded version of the genderbread person. It's a little bit more neutral too. Folks had a hard time with the genderbread person feeling like it was still kind of masculine leaning. So this really great organization called TSER, Trans Student Educational Resources. This is free. You can go to their website, download it. There's coloring page versions of it. There are versions of it in almost any language you could think of. It's a fantastic, fantastic resource. I love it so much. And this is the idea behind this, is to kind of let folks walk through it as an exercise. You can go through and kind of plot yourselves along these lines here in terms of your own identities. To what extent do you feel like you identify as a female? To what extent do you feel like you identify as male? To what extent do you feel like you identify as something else? You just kind of get to go through and plot yourself out, and thank you, Ben. Plot yourself out and explore our own identities, our own identities. Folks sit down and do this, and then I get emails sometimes and they tell me like, wow, I've never thought about this before. Or if we were in person, I might have the coloring page version for you to sit down and work on it while you're listening. And if you have time, I would encourage you, sit down with it. It's a fun activity. I just want to show you all this real quick. I think I can send you the slides. I'm going to send you the slides. But we've talked about so many different terms and in 4 different categories. So this is just to kind of show you what goes where, because we've talked about all of these different identities, and because we've talked about things relating to sex assigned at birth being biological, being anatomical, being male or female versus the term man and women. So yeah, so you'll have access to this, but this is just a snapshot of all of the terms that we've been using and talking about, and the categories in which you would use them to describe someone. One other really big point that I want to make here is that gender identity, gender expression, and sexual orientation, cannot say this enough. These are all different concepts. None of these things are determined by body parts. The only thing that was determined by body parts was what? Someone? Sex assigned at birth. SAB. Oh my God, I love it. Sex assigned at birth. And Suzanne, gender assigned at birth. See here, yes, sex assigned at birth. So really making sure we're not interchanging. That's okay, totally okay. Totally cool, totally cool. Sex and gender are different things. So gender identity, gender expression, sexual orientation is different than sex assigned at birth. None of these things are determined by body parts, because that's sex assigned at birth, as Susanna, as Jennifer both just let us know. Thank you. These are all distinct from one another. One does not inform the other. You have to always avoid assumptions. You cannot know someone's gender identity based on their gender expression or based on their sexual orientation. You can't look at me and my partner walking down the street and understand what our identities are. You can't look at Sarah and understand her identity based on what you see. And these things are all different than sexual behavior too. And I want to point that out. I want to just make a note that even if someone is engaging in sexual acts with someone, that doesn't necessarily have any bearing on their identities. Sexual behavior is not indicative of identity. Make sense? Okay, so real quick, and I want to be mindful of the time. So just to give you all kind of a snapshot, practical application of these things, we're going to hypothetically talk about a person. And for the sake of time, I'm just going to name this person Alex. And our friend Alex here was assigned female at birth. They identify now as a man. They present their gender in a very masculine, kind of more androgynous, masculine leaning. And actually, since we know Alex is a man, I'm gonna use he, him pronouns. So Alex identifies as a man, and he expresses his gender in a very masculine way, and he identifies as heterosexual. So based on this information that we know about Alex being a heterosexual person, identified person, who would Alex's partner be? Who, based on this information, again, who can we infer Alex's partner to be? If someone wants to maybe put it in the chat, some guesses. We can't, okay. Oh, we can't. Oh God, you guys. I'll tell you what, okay. All right, so Yari and Jen, both. You're telling me you cannot infer who Alex's partner would be. And I super appreciate that. I super appreciate that. However, I'm going to challenge you to say, if I'm telling you that this is a heterosexual man that we're talking about, we could assume that someone who identifies as a heterosexual man, based on what we know heterosexual to be, his partner would be someone who is not a man, right? Someone who presents as female. Yes, thank you, Jennifer. What we cannot assume is the identity of his partner. We know that his partner is a woman, but we don't know if she's a cis woman, if she's a trans woman. We don't know if she's queer. We don't know if she's straight. We don't know anything else about her. We just know that Alex is attracted to women because he is a heterosexual man. Does that make sense, folks? And again, and I super appreciate, here I am telling you, we can't assume, we can't assume, we can't assume, and then I ask you to assume, and I no, Keelani, we can't do that. You're listening. That's my takeaway here. You're listening. Okay, but does this make sense? Oh, question. Yes, Susanna. Okay. I'm a physician. Cool. Cancer screening and pregnancy risk is different depending on sex assigned at birth. What is the most appropriate way to ask about this in a physician's office? Definitely. And thank you so much for bringing this up, Susanna. Maybe we can follow up. I do have a lot of info on health disparities that face the LGBTQ community. I purposely took them out for the sake of time. But I do want to just make a point that collecting SOGIE data, you know, it's never disrespectful to ask someone about their identity, to ask someone about their name, to ask someone about their pronouns. And I'm going to go ahead and move us forward a little bit. You all are going to get these slides. So I'm going to fast forward because we are running out of time, and I want us to have a bit of a discussion. So let's talk about avoiding assumptions and back to your point, sorry, Susanna. So yeah, so we do understand, of course, that sex assigned at birth is going to pose, you know, someone's biology, someone's physiology, and their anatomy. That all presents, you know, challenges and you know, it just there are certain things that we need, right, based on our anatomy, based on our biology, and that's okay. So what's really important though is understanding that if you have someone who maybe was assigned female at birth but now identifies as a male, that person, he's still going to need those pap screens. He's still going to need to have those you know, like cervical cancer, right? Like, just because he is now a man, or he is a man, doesn't mean that he is less at risk because of that identity. So I think it's just really important though that when these folks come in, and when you're asking these questions, and if other folks out there are physicians or clinicians or anything at all, I'm not the expert. Like, by all means, please, this is a discussion with all of us. If folks want to jump in here too, please do. But Susanna, I guess all I'm trying to tell you is I super appreciate your question, and it's totally okay to understand that there are going to be differences, and it's just a matter of how you address them within your office. Again, it's never hurts to ask someone's identities, never hurts to ask for pronouns, and making sure that you're aware of that, aware of those experiences of identifying yourself as an ally of folks, you know, as they come in as, yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna get off my horse here for a second. We'll circle back and touch on that in a minute. But yeah, so to talk about avoiding assumptions and some best practices, right? So how are we gonna, I just dumped I spent an hour already dumping all of this onto you. So you're like, okay, Keonani, shut up, now what? What am I gonna do with this? I've told you so many times, you can't assume someone's gender. So when it's natural though, you know, we wanna put people in boxes, we wanna understand, you know, I see Sarah on the street and she presents very feminine. She looks like a female. So I might assume, I would go up to her and say, hey, ma'am, may I help you? But I do know Sarah's identity because I know her as a person. But hypothetically, if I didn't know Sarah, this could potentially be rude. Or the example here on the slide saying, how may I help you, sir? When we're asking this question, even though it's coming from a place of respect, we are putting an assumption on this person. So a very easy fix is just to say, how may I help you? You know, we don't need to put that sir, we don't need to put that ma'am, unless we know. We don't need to put that assumption out there. It's not super necessary. It's not necessary at all. And back to Susanna again, you know, you're a physician or anyone who works with clients, anyone who works with anyone, you know, she is here for her appointment or she is here for whatever, right? We don't need to say that. We can just say the client is here in the waiting room, or, oh, Sarah is here. We can say the patient has arrived, or again, use their name if it's appropriate. The client is here, so-and-so is here. We don't need to use pronouns unless we actually know. Also, in terms of asking about other gendered roles, right? So if you're asking someone about their mother or father, we're assuming that they have a mother and or father. We're assuming the identities of those folks. So again, it's just super easy to switch it neutrally and say, hey, what's your parent's name? What's your guardian's name? I used to work with kids, and so I would always ask the kids, what's your grown-up's name? Again, because, you know, I don't want to assume that it's a parent or a guardian. Just who are you here with? What's your grown-up's name? What's your guardian's name? All these really easy neutral switches that we can make. And I get it. It is hard because language is super gendered. But yeah, just think about it. So again, how a person identifies their sexual orientation does not always tell you who they have sex with or what kind of sex they engage with, and vice versa. This goes back to the point I was making earlier about sexual behavior. Engaging in sexual activity with folks is not going to be an indicator always of someone's sexual orientation. Listen to how folks describe their identities and their partners, and use those same terms if they're comfortable. So going back to me telling you that I identify as queer, that's telling you that you can use that term queer to identify me. And if you are a provider, if you're someone who is working with patients or with clients, it is really important that you get comfortable with these terms. Because if I'm your patient, if I'm your client, and you're not comfortable with the term queer, if I'm going to hear you introduce me or talk about me and someone say, oh, Keonani over here, Keonani's a good queer person, that's going to be detrimental to our relationship. And I would love it if that didn't happen. And I'm sure I can speak for all of your clients and all of your patients out there. Get comfortable with it. Get comfortable. Just challenge yourself. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. If you know it's okay to use this word, it's okay to use this word. And again, and in terms of partners, again, you know, talking about partners, if I'm talking about my girlfriend or my partner, whatever, you don't know her identities. You don't know if she's queer. You don't know if she's straight. You don't know if she's, you know, we can't ever know someone's identity based on someone else's description of them. So rather than asking, oh, hey, do you have a wife? Do you have a girlfriend? Do you have a boyfriend? We can just, are you in a relationship? Are you seeing someone? Do you have a partner? Yeah, and so again, once we know this too, make sure you do not assume that partner's identity. Make sense? Cool. What else? What else? Oh, I love this one. And Susanna, this is back to you, kind of. She can't be gay, she's pregnant. Why is this an assumption? Well, because women can get pregnant, period, no matter what their sexual orientation is. Anyone with the appropriate anatomy can get pregnant. They don't even have to be a woman to get pregnant. I don't need to talk to my patient about safe sex because she's a lesbian. And Susanna, again, I'm sorry to keep calling you out, but now that I know that you're a physician, you're in my head here. You always need to talk about safe sex. It's an assumption because everyone is susceptible to STDs, STIs, regardless of sexual orientation. We all need to be engaged. If we're having sex, it needs to be safe sex. It doesn't matter who we're having sex with, it just needs to be safe. We're all at risk, period. So some best practices, what can you do with this knowledge? What can you do with this information? Knowing how to talk about these things is super crucial to setting up these welcoming and safer, at least, environments. Again, if you can't get the word queer out of your mouth, I'm not going to be able to look at you as an ally, as someone who I can come to. I can't come to your business. I can't come to your office. I can't come anywhere because you don't know how to talk about this, and it's going to be triggering. It's going to be traumatic. It's going to be it's just, yeah, is this making sense? Is this resonating? I hope. Creating an environment of accountability and respect requires everyone to work together. So we're all, shelter in place right now. Things are different. They're not, things are out of the norm. We're maybe not interacting with our colleagues in the same way, but we all do need to still work together. We all need to make concerted efforts, to put these best practices into place, to have institutional practices in place. Does your organization offer gender neutral bathrooms? Does your organization ask for and respect pronouns? Like what sorts of things can we all do as an entity? I did a terrible thing at the beginning of this training. I did not introduce myself with my name and my pronouns. Granted, they're right here above me, so but that's a best practice, and that's something that we all need to do together. I should have said, hi, my name is Keelani, my pronouns are they, them, theirs, and I'm the community outreach specialist at the Office of LGBT Affairs. That way, I'm inviting folks to then share their name and pronouns. We're working together to create that respect. Also, don't be afraid to politely correct your colleagues if they make an insensitive or factually incorrect comment. These are all just very straightforward. Cis people, and Jen saying cis people can help normalize the term partner when talking about their own partner too. Yeah, there is a lot of assumption. If someone says partner, we think, we think, oh, they must be gay or queer or something, because if it was a boyfriend or a girlfriend, they would say that. Practice using non-gender terms like folks, y'all, and partner. A little Southern hospitality goes a long way. One of my favorite phrases is, hey guys. I say it all the time, and I'm trying to stop, but I can't. And I'm working on it, though. It's a work in progress, because that's another one of those very gendered phrases. It can be polarizing and it can upset folks. And here's some examples of if in the workplace, someone is saying something, those kinds of comments are hurtful to others and don't create a respectful work environment. If you hear someone trash talking Jen, or if you hear someone trash talking Sarah and saying, oh, all trans women are blah, 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 right? No. Intervene, step up, speak up for your colleagues, say something. Or here's a specific example, just like that. Dan identifies as transgender, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's gay. Sexual orientation and gender identity are different concepts. And also one point I want to make, don't assume someone's level of outness. We know that Sarah's a trans woman because she told us that, but that doesn't mean that Alex, our friend Alex, from a few slides ago, maybe Alex doesn't know that Sarah's a trans person. That's not for us to tell Alex, because we don't know that Sarah's had that conversation with Alex yet. Make sense? I'm jumping all over the place now. Okay, this is our last thing, and we're doing good on time. We're doing good on time. Okay, we're okay. Things are fine. Everything's fine. Pause. All right, y'all. I'm going to engage you again, if possible. Let me know you're still with us here. Can someone tell me perhaps what a pronoun is? Any other Websters out there? I'm not Webster, so I can't help you. I can't help you. I push a button and give you the answer, but I want to know if you know what a pronoun is. And there's no shame. I'll say your name out loud, but I won't put you on blast. Oh, thanks, Jennifer. No one wants to tell me what a pronoun is? No? Bueller.
Okay, fine, I'll tell you. I'll be Webster. A pronoun is any word that can replace a noun or a noun phrase. And it usually refers to someone that we're talking about. Basically, a pronoun is what we put in place of someone's name. For example, if I'm talking about Sarah, and I know Sarah's pronouns are she, her, hers, but if I didn't know that Sarah's pronouns were she, her, hers, I might say, Sarah came to the training today, and Sarah was wearing Sarah's yellow dress, and Sarah has a rainbow pride flag sitting behind Sarah's head in Sarah's room, wherever Sarah is working remotely. That's a lot to say Sarah over and over and over again. Sarah's a great name, don't get me wrong, I like it, super cool, the spelling, great, love it. But I know Sarah's pronouns, so I don't need to say her name over and over and over and over again. I can say Sarah's here wearing her yellow dress, and she has her hair in a bun, and her rainbow pride flag is sitting behind her wherever she is working remotely from home. Pronouns, replacing a noun. Why, and please do put this in the chat, why should you ask for someone's pronouns? Why should you offer your own pronouns? Why is it why are understanding and respecting pronouns important? Do we understand why we're even having this conversation? Why? Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Susanna. It shows you're a safe person to talk to. Yeah. And yes, we will be sharing this recording. Thank you, Jen. Okay, well, yeah, Jennifer pretty much hit the nail on the head. It shows that you're a safe person to talk to. When we ask for and offer pronouns, when we're offering our pronouns, we're letting folks know how we want to be addressed, right? It communicates an openness and it makes space for folks to share their pronouns with you. By introducing myself, hi, my name is Kehlani, my pronouns are they, them, theirs, then maybe Sarah will take that as a sign to go, oh, my name's Sarah, my pronouns are she, her, hers. Or maybe she'll be like, oh, pronouns, what's that? And then you get to be Webster and you get to inform and educate folks. Or Sarah will be like, well, obviously I'm a woman, so why are you even asking me this question? Why do I need to tell you what my pronouns are? And here again, we have this beautiful moment of a beautiful opportunity for education and for training and for letting folks know, well, actually, this is my way of wanting to respect other people. It's my way of saying, hey, I don't want to assume, but I want to make sure that I understand you and how you know yourself to be. And so I just want to be sure. I just want to ask. I want to be respectful. It's coming from a good place. Ooh, I love this question. Should we call them preferred pronouns? On top of asking for someone's pronouns, do we call them preferred pronouns? Does anyone have thoughts on the word preferred? Someone told me not to, but I would love to hear more about why. Yeah, well, you're right, Jen. You shouldn't say preferred pronouns. Pronoun and name choice. This is something that folks put a lot of time into. They put a lot of effort, a lot of energy, and it's someone's identity, right? It's who we are. To call it a preference leaves room for it to be ignored, right? To call someone's pronouns their preference, again, it's like today I wore this white shirt with blue flowers on it, right? And I made that choice. I preferred this shirt today over my gray shirt with blue flowers on it, right? If I'm just saying that this shirt is my preference, though, you'd be like, Kehlani, it doesn't matter. Just put your shirt on and go do the training. My pronouns are not preferred. They're not a preference. These are my identity. And so we cannot stress enough how important it is to respect someone's identity, who we know ourselves to be, that takes a lot. That takes a lot to put that out there. And again, referring to pronouns as a preference, again, it leaves room for dismissal. It leaves room for people to ignore it. Again, it's like saying, well, you prefer the red M&M, but it's exactly the same as the green M&M, so shut up and eat the green M&M, right? It's the same thing. But it's not a preference. Pronouns are not a preference. Identity is not a preference. Cool? I'm sorry my language is getting aggressive. I'm getting amped up now that the training is nearing its end. So what are some examples of pronouns? We've talked a lot about pronouns. So if someone who identifies as male, the typical pronouns you might hear are he, him, his. Why are the bullet points on this different? Sorry. Someone who identifies as female might use the pronouns she, her, hers. And then we have a lot of non-binary or neutral pronouns. They, them, theirs, ze, here, hers, they, them, theirs, am, ears, etc. And again, by no means, this is not an exhaustive list again. I do want to point out, I somewhat made a joke earlier about using someone's name over and over and over again, like Sarah saying Sarah's hair is in a bun and Sarah's wearing Sarah's yellow dress and Sarah's sitting at Sarah's desk, blah, 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 blah. Sometimes folks won't want to use a pronoun. Sometimes they will just want to use their name. And if that's the case, then that's what we're going to do. I don't care if their name is 10 syllables long. If they don't want to use a pronoun, if they use their 10 syllable long name, then that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing because that is their identity. That is how we respect that person. That is how we show them, I see you, I understand you. I also want to point out some folks might use multiple sets of pronouns. We have a lot of colleagues in the office that use, multiple sets, either she, her, or they, them, or he, him, and they, them. Yeah, so and knowing that identities can change. Identity is fluid. Sometimes, and then especially folks who use multiple sets of pronouns, maybe they will have a preference. Maybe one day they'll feel more she, her, and the next day they'll feel more they, them. It's important that everything here is nuanced. Everything here is it's all a work in progress. Again, it is all a work in progress. We're not slapping rainbow sashes on you and be like, oh, here you go, you did this training, now you're an ally, you're done. This is all a work in progress. How can we help our friends who aren't used to pronouns that weren't taught to them in school and perhaps of an older generation? That's a great question too, Jen. There's so many cool resources out there. I'll pull some and compile some. There's some apps you can download and put on your phone that'll help you use non-traditional pronouns. There are games you can play. I've heard stories of folks, someone's grandma went and decided to call all of her plants by they, them pronouns. So she would go around and every time watering her plants, she would practice using they, them pronouns. Again, just you do what you got to do. You do whatever you have to do. And I want to note, you're gonna mess up someone's pronouns. You're gonna mess up. If I accidentally call Sarah they, them, theirs, knowing that her pronouns are she, her, hers, I would feel bad about that. And but we all make mistakes. We're human, and it's a matter of how we respond to that mistake. It's like, oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me. I know she, her, hers. Like you're a woman, Sarah, and you're my friend, and we're coworkers and we're colleagues. And oh my God, Sarah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Oh, that's oh my God. I hate. That's awful. That's awful. It's okay to make a mistake. Be like, oh, Sarah, I'm so sorry. She is here. Blah 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 blah. Right? I correct myself, I apologize to Sarah briefly, I move on, then I can go back to her later, perhaps privately, and be like, oh, hey, Sarah, I just want to touch base. I'm really sorry, I messed up earlier. I'll be more aware. And even actually apologizing for it is not the best thing, but we don't need to talk about that. Do apologize and move on, I guess. Don't make it a big deal. But practice to get back to Jen's question, practice using pronouns whenever you can. Do what you got to do. Name your plants, name your pets. Change even yourself for a day. Decide that today I'm going to go by they, them pronouns. I'm going to ask everyone around me to refer to me as they, them. Yeah, there's options. There's all kinds of stuff. And again, we'll send out some other resources and more info on pronouns. But I do encourage you to use your pronouns whenever you can to, again, email signatures, business cards. On Zoom here, we added our pronouns to our names. We have our Zoom backgrounds here. Again, anytime you can put your pronoun out, it's just a good visual sign of inclusion and of welcome. And on that note, I want to show you some other cool signs of inclusion and welcome. You'll notice some of these branded here that say we stand with community. These are free resources offered by our office. We have stickers that are, I think they're 2 inches by 3 inches, and then we have 8.5 by 11 placards. We can send these out to you. You can put them up in your offices if you want. Again, though, knowing that if you're going to put these visual signs up, you're going to have to show the receipts. You're going to have to back it up. You're going to have to put these best practices into place and let us know that you are upholding the LGBTQ community. You are practicing active allyship and not just slapping a rainbow sticker in your window to call it good, right? It doesn't just end here. Super, super, super important. Continue furthering your education, continue going on your own journeys and ask questions, reach out to us always. We have just a few minutes left, and so I want to leave space for any other remaining questions or discussion or anything like that. But also just give you the contact info slide here so you can follow us on social media, email us. Sarah and I'll put our direct emails in the chat here, but I guess that's all I have for slides. And I realize it's coming kind of an abrupt ending, but I want to leave us a few minutes to chat and to hang out. So thank you all for listening to this. This has been an experience. Yeah. Cheers.
So while we give people some time to type in their questions, I do want to thank you both. Kehlani, you were amazing. Stop apologizing. I think that was great. I personally was having a lot of fun this whole time, if you couldn't tell by my chat. Thank you, Sarah, too. I really appreciate both of you. For those of you who are still here, I know some people had to go because they had other meetings, but for those of you who are still here, I had so much fun planning this with Kehlani and Sarah. Even though it didn't take a whole lot of our time to plan it, this has been a lot of fun. But yeah, if you have any questions, go ahead and either, I guess, put them in chat or the Q&A, because I've been copying and pasting out of the chat. And I don't know that we have any questions that'll come up just yet, but to remind you all, I am going to send an email to everybody who is registered. I know some people nowadays, they're registering for webinars and then watching the recording later, and that is just something I have to be okay with as a training person. But I will send an email that will include all the resources that Kehlani and Sarah want to share with all of you, the PowerPoint presentation. And I will also include the 2 emails that Kehlani included in the chat so that you can all reach out to Sarah and Kehlani with any other follow-up questions, or, if you want any additional information or tools and resources that you can bring back to your organization. Thank you. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you to everybody who stuck with us. I know we were saying earlier, it's the Mondayest Tuesday right now. So I think we're probably ready to close it out. So again, thank you. Check out svcn.org for all of those resources that I shared earlier too. We've got those upcoming trainings for reopening and for the census, and also our Funding Your Impact series. So just a reminder about that. And it looks like we've got the social media. Is that the Instagram account here for the LGBTQ, or Office of LGBTQ Affairs?
All our platforms. That's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We use the same handle across all platforms.
That's great. So go ahead and check that out, everybody. All right, and thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.